don't know what the communal noun is for CEOs, maybe a pride of CEOs. Delighted to welcome Darren Royal from Oldham, Henry Stalens from Forest Green and Paul Barber from Brighton. Darren Royal gets to kick off because you're the only team that's won this weekend. I guess that makes when you walk through the door on a Monday morning a lot better for you.
It does, yeah. Although you try and get out of that habit because obviously there's ups and downs and stuff outside of your control. But yeah, it did help this weekend.
What about you other fellas, Paul and Henry? Does it make life easier? I guess it does make life easier when you're winning. Simple as that.
Yeah, last season was pretty easy. We seemed to win every week. Then everyone around the place in a better mood. Things seem to go right more often than not. This season obviously been a bit tricky, moving up to League One, and it's like momentum. When we don't win on a weekend, the next week everything goes wrong apparently. So yeah, it definitely makes a massive difference.
Playing Manchester City away, Rob, doesn't give you a good feeling in the morning or afternoon, to be honest. So yeah, I mean, we obviously like Henry and Darren. Everybody's better on a win. The office on a Monday morning is always much better.
Darren, do you enjoy the games, watching them?
Not really, no. I think from my perspective where I am, there's an emotional involvement. So I think fear of failure at the clubs adds to that. But that's the ambition, to try and get into a place where you can enjoy it. So we've got a huge job on our hands here, turning it round. It's a club that was a proud member of the Premier League that's now in the National League. So it needs rebuilding from the roots up. So there's a huge amount of work to do. We're very impatient. We want to do it quickly, but we've got to be patient. So we'll enjoy it more when we're on the right track.
Can you separate yourself, Henry, emotionally from what's happening on the pitch?
You have to. Because in the day, the chief exec, although there's an element of sporting performance, a lot of it is the operations and the finance and the commercial stuff behind the scenes. So especially at home games, you have to be switched on. You can't just get immersed in the game, as hard as that might be. But away games are far more enjoyable for me. That's the way I find it anyway.
Paul, is one of the most difficult aspects of not just being a CEO, but being a chairman, being a director of football, is and it's key to you all really, is appointing the manager.
Yeah, I think it's, certainly our chairman would say it's the most important decision that he ultimately makes. I mean, we myself and David Weir, our technical director, have input to that, but ultimately it's the owner's decision. And it's a vital one for the whole club. It's probably the one position, maybe other than the chief executives or the chairman, that does genuinely affect the mood and the performance of the whole club ultimately. So, yeah, it's a big decision and one that obviously we've had to recently make.
But it's also it's an imponderable, isn't it, for all three of you? David Unsworth's just come in at Oldham, Ian Birchnell at Forest Green from the start of the season. What's the criteria? How do you go about making sure you've got possibly the right person in charge?
Well, certainly in our case, we have a pretty strict criteria for the type of football that we want to play, the type of person that we want in the club. We have some very strong and well-defined values that we expect everybody in the club, from myself and the manager downwards to exhibit. And we keep a running tab really of those coaches that fit that bill. And of course, when you come to making a change, as we did a few weeks ago, it does largely depend on what your prime candidates are doing at any particular time. We were lucky with Roberto De Zerbi that he was available. Unfortunately, the war in Ukraine brought to an end his time at Shakhtar Donetsk, which made him available to us. Obviously, if that hadn't have happened, then we would have probably been looking further down our list. So a combination, I think, of footballing style and philosophy, values, and ultimately availability.
Henry, what about you? How do you arrive at a decision like Ian?
Similar to Paul in a way. We had a short list of one for our most recent appointment in Ian. Rob obviously moved on to Watford. Not in a way we'd hoped for, but Rob's a great guy. He's a great coach. So we wanted something similar in the fact someone that's a proper football coach, not maybe not had loads of experience as a manager in the older version of the word. We've got a director of football set up here. So getting in like a good person who's a proper football coach with maybe some more modern, innovative ideas is the way we always look.
Darren, how do you arrive at David Unsworth?
For us, we've gone through a change of ownership in the summer, and it was a period of 4 or 5 years of instability really before that. So we've come to a place where we've had the club legend John Sheridan guide us through a very difficult period, change of ownership, and then a transition to a new team coming in, and we needed somebody that could come in basically and build the entire infrastructure from academy, B team to first team, but could also win football matches, and it has had that experience. I think we also needed somebody that was collaborative and would build relationships with the board and maintain relationships with the board. So again, our shortlist narrowed down as to the type of person we needed, and David Unsworth interviewed impeccably and brought with him a very high set of standards from a Premier League background.
At the same time, Paul and I guess Henry, when the likes of Graham Potter, who's just been unbelievable, and Rob, who's been sensational for both your clubs, I mean, they go, I tell you what, we're leaving. I mean, I don't know. I don't know when that's sort of when they come and tell you, or how does it work? And do you think, oh my goodness, what are we going to do now?
Well, certainly in our case, we try and prepare for the head coach leaving at the point that they arrive, to be honest, because I think that the only thing that's absolutely sure in football is that at one point it's going to happen. And you have to be, an Alex Ferguson or an Arsene Wenger probably for it not to happen over a long period of time. So we start to prepare as soon as they arrive. When that call comes, inevitably it's usually, certainly in our case, the agent that calls, followed by the club that wants him. And then you've got a process, as we have, for dealing with that, which, is a significant notice period and compensation. And you have to be pragmatic. There's no way in any business, let alone football, that you can change someone to a job that they don't want to be in if another job that's better in their mind comes to the opportunity. So from our point of view, we start planning as soon as they come in. We're pragmatic. We've got to run the football club, literally the hour after they leave. So we have to be very prepared for that, and we are.
And Henry, I mean, Rob Edwards goes to Watford, and now he's not at Watford anymore within a comparatively short space of time.
Yeah, who saw that coming? Rob's a great coach and a great guy, and I think that will moving there maybe wasn't the right move. He'll be the one to say whether it was or not. But he'll move on to somewhere else and do really well. When he left us, we'd just been promoted, obviously, and there was quite a few approaches for different members of our sort of senior staff, because people want, we had the momentum, we had that winning touch at the time. And all I remember is a lot of the football side were out in Benidorm celebrating. Rob wasn't there, and that's when it all happened. So it couldn't have happened at a worse time. But we moved quickly for Ian, and we're certainly making progress.
For all three of you, is your key relationship within the club with the chairman?
So certainly in my case, it is the chairman and the head coach and the technical director would probably be the three people that I would speak to most often on a day-to-day basis. And, again, if you look at the axis of the club, where we generate our income from, who ultimately is money that we're playing with. In our case, it's Tony Bloom's money. And who do we depend on to maintain our status in the Premier League? It's actually, the head coach. So ultimately, those three guys working, closely together are really important to the functioning of the club day to day.
Paul, if I can just stay with you, do you row?
We certainly don't agree on everything, and I think that's healthy. Certainly in my experience of 25, coming up 26 years in football, healthy discussions are important. And, I don't get involved in picking the team or determining the tactics, and nor does the chairman. But I would expect the technical director to have conversations with the head coach from time to time. And certainly when it comes to how we run the club day to day and how budgets, the chairman and I will have fairly robust conversations from time to time. And likewise, I think it's healthy and encouraged to debate things, and we do.
Darren, you've got a football background, of course, with the family. You as a player as well. Are you encouraged to input football-wise, or is there a tendency to say, look, I'll stay back and do my job? How does that work? How do the lines blur in that respect?
I think with David Unsworth, it's a case of supporting him and his team in the building process where we are. So I think the CEO's role isn't about picking the football team or designing the technical strategy. It's that's what you employ these guys to do. So it's what Paul was mentioning there around working with the owner. We've got a very unique situation, I think, in that it's a family as well as an owner, and they're local people emotionally invested in the club, as well as invested through their money as well. So it's keeping a very good relationship and clear relationship with the board from an ownership perspective down for us. That's key. So as a board, we don't get involved in making football decisions. We allow the manager and his team to do that.
I mean, it was a turbulent time at Oldham. There's no getting away from it. Frank Rothwell's come in. I know you're a big part of it, local guy. What kind of reaction have you had from the fans, and is there a goodwill feeling at the moment?
There's a massive goodwill feeling from the fans, from the football community, from the political community as well. There's some very senior politicians in the region who have all got behind us, but the supporters have turned out in the numbers. We've had 9,400 against Wrexham. We're averaging over 7,000 for a National League team. Is excellent. It's the second highest in the league. So for an area with significantly high elements of social deprivation and inequalities, the supporters are backing us, and that's a huge bonus for us.
For people watching this, Henry, and if you were to tell people, what does a CEO of a football club do? What would you say is the most important aspect of your job?
I'm sure, like the other guys, they get asked that from people outside of football quite a lot, and I've never come up with a really succinct and clever answer. I would ultimately say that what I do and maybe what we do, I can't speak for these guys, but typically you're there to create a culture, to look after the club commercially and financially, which in turn will obviously benefit the team. So the better we do from the business and operations side of things, that could be player trading, it could be ticket sales, it could be partnerships, whatever it might be, will generate more funds for the first team, obviously women's academy, and the whole place benefits. So ultimately, I think it is the business side of it. It's creating a really solid and compelling business model that provides funds for the first team.
At the same time, you're in a rather unique position, aren't you? The greenest football club in the world. Not so much are your hands tied, but I guess you've got to look at sponsors and partners in a different way from maybe perhaps Brighton and Oldham.
I would say our hands are very untied. I don't know what the opposite is, but yeah, I mean, we are the greenest football club in the world with the world's first carbon neutral football stadium. So we are the only green game in town, really, for in terms of authenticity. We were the first to do it. We're the most prominent. So in terms of partnerships, we can set our price. We are the place to go for a lot of these sustainable and environmentally led brands. So no, I would say it's the opposite. Actually, our PR and our standing on the environment side of things gives us one of the biggest sponsorship revenues, we believe, in the top three. In the EFL.
It's fantastic to see Soccerex back in Miami. We're incredibly honored to have them in our city. For them to be committed to coming to Miami on a regular basis and every time continuing to grow this fantastic event.
It's so nice to be back here and in person and around people again at an event where you have some of the most influential and important people in soccer in our region and from around the world. It's nice to see smiling faces and people that are back here and really enjoying it.
We needed this opportunity to get together, to talk to each other, to exchange ideas.
I think more than ever it's important. I mean, we've just come off almost 3 years of remote access and computer screens, and there's nothing quite like being in an event and the excitement and the buzz that you get from that.
I mean, it's just incredible, you know, the crowd here from Central, South America, from Europe, from the Far East. It's one big family, one big party.
There looks to be a lot of good new innovative technology, which for me as a performance director and sports scientist is exciting for me to see how we can develop the game with different kinds of technology.
The face-to-face social interaction that has left us over the last couple of years. That's how relationships get formed, that's how connections get established, that's how business gets done.
It's interesting to learn and see the reality and not only, papers and, regulations, so it's great.
I mean, our industry is one big family, all trying to grow the game in whatever aspect of the business that we're in.
Paul, is it too much football?
I suppose it depends which way you look at it. Sometimes when I look at the fixture list and how we try and sort of jam fixtures into almost every day of the week, you start to think that. But I think the appetite is there, and certainly, I come from a family of football lovers, and my neighbours are, and the people opposite me are, and they actually enjoy the choice of games that they get, whether it's the Premier League, the EFL, even the international games. People deride them, but actually people do tune into them. And I'm sure this World Cup, as unusual as it's going to be, is going to get huge audiences as well. So you could certainly make a case for there being too much football for the athletes, for the players. But I think for people that love football, the audiences actually support the fact that we're getting these games every day of the week.
Don't footballers come to you and say, I'm shattered? I heard Declan Rice the other day going, I'm going into games, I'm absolutely shattered. I'm knackered after every game, even going into them. Isn't there a case that we maybe don't listen to footballers enough?
There might be. I mean, going back to your question to Henry, I kind of try and sum up my job as trying to do everything I can to make it as easy as possible for our teams to win football matches. That's how I kind of sum up my job. And when you hear the players complaining about fatigue and potential risk of injury, then clearly I have to listen to that, because if we are suffering higher level injuries or higher levels of fatigue, we're not doing everything we can to make it possible for our teams to win matches. But at the same time, I know Darren will remember from his dad's time, the pitches that were played on in those times were not like the pitches they're played today. The facilities we have at the training grounds are now, certainly in our case, world class, and the players have the best possible preparation, have the best possible recovery. They have as much support around them as possible. But at the same time, they're human beings, and we have to balance all of these conflicting sort of priorities, whether it's financial, whether it's sporting, whether it's TV, with what we are dealing with, which are human beings.
I mean, every way you look, it's football. Darren, do you worry the bubble might burst at all?
I don't think it can. I think it's got its challenges in this country up and down the pyramid at various levels. If you look at the popularity of the sport and the regions of the world where it's taking off and growing, for example, the USA, the value of the Premier League is only going to go up, and that's reassuring for all of us, because down to the National League and the pyramid, we all rely on that. So how that's managed is an area of debate with championship clubs and parachute payments, I know, and moving forwards, and with the EFL. So there are going to be pockets of debate around the ecosystem of football, but I don't think the bubble can burst. It's how we manage moving forwards. Is there going to be a different model to the broadcast rights model that we've got now in the future? with internet and streaming. I'm sure there will be, but the popularity of the sport's only going to go up. And I suppose the World Cup in Qatar is testimony that it's globalising the game by moving it around different regions.
Should there be a different financial model, Henry?
I think a lot of different clubs and different leagues would say different things. So, from our point of view, we're quite comfortable in the way it happens. But there's definitely going to be a better solution that comes along. I think for football fans to pay X amount, they do for a certain satellite provider. Maybe don't get all the games they want, and they maybe they'd rather pay 50 quid a month to see all of their club's games. So more of like an EFL streaming type thing. So no, I think a better solution will come along, but I certainly don't think it's broken.
How does the World Cup affect you, Paul?
Well, we lose probably about 9 or 10 players to the World Cup. So, we will obviously have our break. Those players will go off. We will then have to sort of restart the season, and we'll be doing that with another sort of effectively mini pre-season program where we take the players off to a warmer climate to prepare again for the second half of the season. And then as the players that are at the World Cup lose and come out of the competition, then they'll rejoin the group. So it's going to be a very strange period. I mean, in my 25, 26 seasons in football, I can't remember ever having this sort of time in the middle of the season other than sort of the COVID break, which obviously was a different time of year altogether. But it's going to be strange, and it's going to be an interesting sort of second half of the season to see if those clubs that have got momentum now maintain that momentum. Those clubs that have had a difficult first half, somehow find a re-switch somehow to get their season going. But it's certainly going to be different, Rob. Not one that we've experienced before.
Certainly not for all of us, I think. Fellas, can I just ask you about player recruitment? I guess it's obviously key for all your clubs on different levels. Paul, how many scouts have you got? Where do you go? How does it work? And is it a key area for Brighton?
It's a vital area for us. We can't compete with the biggest clubs in the Premier League when it comes to transfer fees. So we've got to fish in different ponds. We've got to find players that are much lower value, hopefully coach them to be better players and then sell them on. And we've been able to do that pretty successfully over the last couple of seasons, which is what our model is all about. But scouts all over the world, yes, we use a lot of data as well. So it's a combination really of looking at numbers and data, eyes on scouting, and also quite a lot of personal profiling as well to understand the character of the individuals that we're bringing into the club. That's really important. If you bring a bad character and you can have the best statistics in the world, eyes on scouting can say, very good things, but if it's a bad character, then that can actually be quite damaging to the club. So from our point of view, it's a combination of all those things.
Henry, what about Forest Green? How does it work?
We've got we're currently recruiting for a new one, but it all goes through our director of football and very analysis led these days. But as Paul mentioned, there's also a background check on personality because you can bring in one bad egg, so to speak, and ruin a whole group. So director of football and his scouting network previously, obviously he's moved on now to Portsmouth. Did really well last season. We had the 14th biggest budget in League 2, but went up as champions. This league will very comfortably in the bottom 5 or 6 budgets in League 1. So actually, good recruitment is the way for clubs like ourselves and Brighton to sort of punch above our weight.
I guess the same as Oldham, is it? Do you go local?
Well, we don't have to go far because we had a meeting about this last week. I think there's 39 teams within 90 minutes drive of Oldham, and the northwest Greater Manchester is obviously a hotbed, so slightly different to the challenges of Brighton and Forest Green in that we will shop in a different supermarket. Data is absolutely key, but then to some of the leagues and some of the players that we're looking at, there isn't a lot of data around, so possibly more reliant on local networks and scouting as well. It's our challenges are more around finding players at this level that will help us as well along the journey in terms of becoming assets we can sell to bring income into the club, but also helping us win football matches.
Henry, how do you get away from it? I guess it's 24/7. How do you relax?
It's one of those. Before football, I had my own companies. People think that's immersive, and it is. You go on holiday, you don't, you never far away from your phone. But football is even more so than having your own company. So no, it's very difficult. You work Monday to Saturday effectively, and Saturday, Christ, we've got Fleetwood, Barnsley, and South Shields our next 3 games. So by the time I get back in my electric car, it will be Sunday. Then you go again on Monday. So no, it's a really weird world, but yeah, we're very privileged to be in it.
Paul, do you get away from your job by watching football?
Oh, well, as you know, Rob, I love it. It used to be my kids that helped me switch off, but 2 of the 3 of them now work in football, so that doesn't work anymore either. But no, I still love the game. I watch it at all levels, and it is good to switch off for it. But trying to do something different. I run a bit, not so much these days as I'm getting older. But that's my release really, just getting out on the road and running.
I'm sitting here at UCFB, which is a university for media in football. Darren, if there's potential CEOs amongst the students, would you recommend the job?
Yeah, absolutely. It's being in football it's a great opportunity. I think it's different to some elements of big industry and corporate industry in terms of the rapid pace and change. So yeah, it's exciting. Absolutely. UCFB's a fantastic university as well. It's a disruptor in the marketplace, I think, and it's got some very exciting courses. So I see it as an area where in the future, as the industry expands, more and more opportunities are going to become available.
Darren, what's success for Oldham this season?
Well, success is gauged on a number of levels. We've got to rebuild a business as well as a football infrastructure and the team as well. So success would be great to get into the top 7, which is a playoff spot in the National League. So that would be great. And but we have to look a bit longer term as well from where we are at present.
Henry?
We've got to stay in League One. Realistically, we spent 5 years or so trying to get here. And maybe we got here a bit earlier, and obviously Rob moving on, and then obviously our director of football's now moved on as well. So we're having to transition in the middle, a third of the way through the season, which isn't ideal. But yes, staying in League One and trying to do a bit more than just surviving would be a really good place for us. And then obviously on the other side, being profitable and carrying on with our sustainability work.
Paul?
Yeah, I think building on what we managed to achieve last season, we managed our first ever top 10 finish in the Premier League, and building on that and trying to repeat that would be fantastic. But our priority, is recognising who we are, where we've come from, and staying in the Premier League is always going to be the number one priority. And it's very competitive, and there are a lot of very big football clubs who are below us in that league at the moment, who we know are only going to get stronger and better as the season goes on. So staying in the Premier League, and if we can build on last season's finish, fantastic.
Fellas, thanks for joining us today. Best of luck for the rest of the season to you all.